years ago, God told me, I want you to teach my people how to live. And I'm trying to teach you how to live.
Gasps filled the federal courtroom as the judge delivered the final verdict. Joyce Meyer, overwhelmed by the weight of her sentence, collapsed in shock. The dramatic scene left spectators stunned, highlighting the intense emotions surrounding the case. But what led to this shocking courtroom confrontation between the beloved televangelist and the justice system? Here's everything you need to know about the explosive legal battle that brought the ministry empire builder to her knees. Meyer was widely regarded as one of the most influential figures in Christian ministry, celebrated for her straightforward teaching style, personal transparency, and unparalleled ability to connect with audiences worldwide. Her career, spanning over 4 decades in ministry, included iconic moments such as her best-selling books, global conferences, and television broadcasts reaching millions daily. However, Meyer's legacy extends far beyond her religious achievements. Her influence on Christian women's empowerment, her contributions to practical faith teaching, and her deliberate decision to build a family-controlled ministry empire all paint a picture of a woman deeply dedicated to her message and organizational growth. Meyer's ministerial career was built on a foundation of personal testimony, biblical teaching, and an unwavering commitment to her interpretation of Scripture. Despite facing early criticism, including questions about her theology and lifestyle, she refused to let detractors define her. Instead, she channeled her determination into building Joyce Meyer Ministries, eventually earning her place as one of the wealthiest religious leaders in America. Her performances earned her a devoted following, solidifying her status as a prosperity gospel pioneer. What set Meyer apart was her ability to deliver messages about overcoming personal struggles with a conviction and relatability that resonated deeply with audiences seeking practical faith applications. While Meyer's teaching made her famous, her business ventures showed her strategic mind. After building her ministry into a powerhouse, she diversified with publishing companies, real estate holdings, and media productions that made her hundreds of millions, money that would later become central to the legal war against her ministry's tax-exempt status and financial practices. The aftermath of Meyer's rise to prominence saw both her ministry and public scrutiny take dramatically different paths. Joyce Meyer Ministries' trajectory skyrocketed after expanding to television, with broadcasts reaching over 200 countries and donations flowing in at unprecedented rates. Their sophisticated approach, coupled with strong emotional appeals, positioned them as one of the most financially successful religious organizations in America. Meanwhile, investigative journalists faced immediate roadblocks. The media, attempting to examine the ministry's finances, initially received minimal cooperation. Their investigations operated on limited information, a fraction of the financial data typically available from transparent organizations. The stark disparity between public claims of charitable work and private financial practices created tensions that would fester for decades. "We're blessed to be a blessing," Meyer frequently told followers in fundraising broadcasts. "But scrutiny makes you stronger. I'm determined to expand this ministry's reach, especially when critics question our methods." This determination fueled an increasingly complex financial structure. While traditional churches maintained modest operations, Joyce Meyer Ministries doubled down on expansion and acquisition. Private jets, luxury vehicles, and multiple ministry-owned residences showcased a prosperity message in physical form, establishing a lifestyle that critics argued contradicted traditional religious values of humility and moderation. The 2010s saw the contrast between ministry growth and public accountability intensify as both reached new levels. Meyer's fundraising peaked with special events drawing millions in donations, while investigative reports by media outlets raised increasingly specific questions about tax exemptions, personal use of ministry assets, and financial transparency. Behind the scenes, however, Meyer struggled with mounting pressure that threatened to expose ministry finances, problems she often attributed to persecution against her message. "The attacks against this ministry have been relentless," she stated during a broadcast. "I turned to what I know, prayer and faith, and it sustained us multiple times." This spiritual framing contrasted sharply with the IRS's increasingly focused operation. By 2022, the gap between religious exemption and financial scrutiny had become enormous. While the ministry portrayed all questions as spiritual attacks, financial regulators were assembling a case that would soon become public in the most dramatic way possible. What finally triggered the federal investigation after decades of financial questions? A discovery during a 2022 audit of connected business entities by forensic accountant Thomas Richards. "I found these unusual transaction patterns in the records," Richards explained in a congressional hearing that quickly made rounds among religious watchdog groups. "You can clearly see ministry funds being systematically directed through a network of entities, with resources flowing to personal assets despite tax-exempt status." The financial records became a major topic in regulatory circles, with government agencies analyzing the complex web of transactions between ministry accounts and personal holdings. A week later, a former ministry financial officer provided documents that estimated lifetime personal benefit from ministry resources at approximately $420 million, with minimal taxation due to careful structuring of compensation and asset ownership. The ministry purchased these assets, but they functioned as personal property. The whistleblower told investigators, "Private jets used primarily for family vacations, luxury vehicles, and residential properties, all while maintaining tax-exempt status." This insider testimony, revealing details about financial practices, seemed to be the final catalyst. Within weeks, federal prosecutors assembled a case and filed multiple charges against Meyer, including tax evasion, wire fraud, and misuse of charitable funds that carried potential prison sentences of up to 30 years if convicted on all counts. The charges weren't just about money. These allegations represented a fundamental challenge to Meyer's core message, that prosperity was a sign of divine blessing rather than potentially fraudulent financial practices. The legal action sent shockwaves through religious communities, with experts calling it potentially the most significant tax case involving a religious organization in decades. Court filings revealed startling details about the business structure that supported Meyer's lifestyle. Internal memos from 2010 showed that multiple advisors had actually warned about potential regulatory issues. However, concerns about maintaining the ministry's image led to a calculated decision. "Current structure presents unacceptable audit risk," read one confidential document. "Recommend immediate reorganization before proceeding with additional asset acquisitions." Day one of the trial set the tone. As Meyer entered the courtroom, financial investigators visibly watched her every move. Government attorneys arranged stacks of financial records before them. The decades-long ministry that had avoided financial transparency had finally reached its legal battleground. "Your Honor, this case is about systematic tax evasion on a massive scale," the prosecutor opened. "A religious organization used to fund a private lifestyle while avoiding millions in legitimate tax obligations." The trial quickly became intense. When the newly discovered financial records were displayed in court, Meyer was seen shaking her head emphatically, occasionally leaning to whisper to her attorneys when particularly damaging evidence was presented. During cross-examination, tensions escalated. "Agent Miller, is it your testimony that Ms. Meyer personally directed these transactions?" asked the prosecutor. "Her signature appears on all key authorizations." The IRS investigator responded firmly. "And these signatures authorized the purchase of a $10 million jet classified as a ministry expense, while flight logs show 78% personal use." The courtroom grew particularly tense during testimony about the ministry campus. "Would you say the multiple residences on ministry property were necessary for religious functions?" questioned the prosecutor. "They were designated as parsonages," Meyer's attorney replied tersely. Meyer, visibly agitated, adjusted her jewelry. The judge warned, "Ms. Meyer, please maintain composure in my courtroom. Financial experts testified about the sophisticated structure of the ministry's holdings. These entities were designed to create multiple layers between donations and personal benefit, testified Dr. Eleanor Jenkins, forensic accounting expert from Northwestern University. The circular flow of funds between entities obscured the ultimate destination of ministry resources. Meyer's defense focused on religious freedom and ministerial discretion, arguing that the government was overstepping its bounds by questioning how a church allocated its resources. My client has preached the same message of prosperity for 40 years, her attorney argued. Her lifestyle is a testimony to the principles she teaches, not evidence of wrongdoing. As the trial neared its end, religious communities watched with intense interest. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a potential landmark case defining the boundaries between religious freedom and financial accountability that could reshape ministry operations nationwide. Financial forensics became a central element of the trial, with accountants following the money trail across decades of ministry operations. The numbers were staggering. Beyond the private jets, which had cost approximately $65 million, there were luxury vehicles estimated at $12.3 million, multiple properties, $48 million, and personal expenses routed through ministry accounts, which added another $25 million and growing. On the final day, the courthouse was surrounded by supporters and critics, some holding Bible verses on signs, while others displayed messages about accountability. Inside, the air felt electric as Judge Eleanor Blackwood prepared to deliver her verdict following 6 weeks of testimony. In the matter of United States v. Meyer, the judge began, this court has carefully weighed the evidence regarding tax obligations, charitable organization requirements, and the defendant's financial practices. The room was so quiet you could hear the leather Bible creak as Meyer clutched it tightly, knuckles white with tension. The court finds compelling evidence that Ms. Meyer engaged in systematic tax evasion through misclassification of personal expenses as ministry necessities, the judge continued, particularly in the operation of aircraft, property usage, and compensation structures designed to avoid taxation. Meyer's eyes widened. Her family members exchanged nervous glances. The court finds the defendant guilty on all counts, the judge stated firmly. Given the scale and sophisticated nature of this operation, along with the defendant's position of public trust, the court must impose the maximum sentence. The judge's ruling was precise. Meyer would be required to pay $85 million in back taxes, penalties, and interest. But the criminal sentence was the real bombshell. She would serve life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years. The court sentences the defendant to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after serving 25 years, the judge announced. Additionally, all assets connected to these illegal activities are hereby forfeited to the United States government. The figure hit Meyer like a physical blow. After 4 decades of ministry, after building an empire worth hundreds of millions, this moment should have been unthinkable. Instead, the reality of life imprisonment, a direct contradiction to her prosperity message, felt like divine abandonment. Her face drained of color. Sweat beaded on her forehead as the judge continued reading the full judgment. Additionally, the defendant must make full restitution and the judge's voice became distant, drowned out by a roaring in Meyer's ears. The courtroom began to spin. Her attorney noticed something was wrong, placing a steadying hand on her arm, but it wasn't enough. The woman who had commanded stages before thousands suddenly slumped forward. Security rushed toward her as a collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. The Tele-evangelist who prided herself on projecting strength and victory was now unconscious before prosecutors and the world. "She's having a cardiac event," a doctor in the gallery called out, pushing through the crowd. "Give her space. Someone call emergency services." As paramedics rushed in, photographers captured the scene that would dominate religious news worldwide. Joyce Meyer, the indomitable force behind prosperity teaching, being carried out on a stretcher. the emotional weight of her legal defeat finally taking its physical toll. Outside the courtroom, her husband Dave was seen briefly in prayer, while ministry executives stood in shocked silence, refusing to comment as they were whisked away by security. The medical drama quickly overshadowed the legal verdict. Religious news sites and social media exploded with reactions as followers shared updates and messages of support with hashtags like #PrayForJoyce and Ministry Justice. 3 days later, still looking pale, but with her familiar intensity returning, Meyer released a video statement from her hospital room. "The enemy came for my freedom, but God has a greater purpose," she explained with a determined expression. "The doctor says my heart is under stress. The Bible says by his stripes I am healed." The health scare seemed to shift something fundamental in the ministry's messaging. In a surprising development, the Meyer family announced organizational changes to the ministry's structure. According to one anonymous source, the ministry would implement new financial oversight measures and transparency practices, though official representatives framed it as ministry evolution, rather than a response to legal requirements. Neither would comment on specific changes, but Meyer's next broadcast struck a different tone. "This legal battle is a test of faith, not a defeat," she said with subdued intensity. "While I appeal this unjust sentence, the ministry will continue stronger than ever. Sometimes God allows you to go through the fire to come out refined." The religious community buzzed with speculation about what might come next. "This case has changed the landscape," commented one veteran ministry consultant. "Churches nationwide are reviewing their financial practices in light of this precedent." Religious observers noted that Meyer appeared to be preparing her son for increased leadership during her potential incarceration. Follower forums immediately lit up with theories about divine purpose behind the legal defeat, though the ministry offered no official theological explanation. When asked directly about serving life in prison, Meyer gave her trademark, confident smile. Paul wrote his greatest epistles from prison. "God never wastes a trial. This will become my greatest testimony." The legal battle had become something unexpected, a potential turning point, rather than a ministry-ending disgrace. Donation pledges reportedly remained strong, with many followers viewing support as an act of spiritual warfare against persecution. For believers who had followed Meyer's teachings for decades, the courtroom drama might represent a profound test of prosperity theology itself. The collapse that shocked the religious world hadn't just been a woman reaching her breaking point. It may have been the beginning of a significant recalibration in how ministries balance message and financial practices. What are your thoughts on the balance between religious freedom and financial accountability? Share your thoughts in the comments.